All right, this is the next episode of True Wrestling Fan Discussion. Today's episode is going to be on WWE Rivals, The Ultimate Warrior, and Hulk Hogan. I'm your host, Mike.
I'm Frank, and before we break down the episode itself, I asked you this the other day, and I'm going to do it again. Is it me, or did it feel like this was just yet another chapter in the ever-going saga to bury the Ultimate
Yeah,
Warrior?
yeah. Now that he's gone, it's just like, oh, well, let's go back to burying him again. Stupid.
That's what bothered me the most. The
Yeah, he
fact
wasn't
that he's not here to defend
right.
himself.
I know. I was going to say that too. We'll get into it, but yeah, I agree.
I just like this wasn't a rival documentary. This was oh, everybody's better than him. He wasn't ready. He's this and that.
Yeah.
I can't stand when they do something like that, especially when the
When
person is not here to
it's
defend
not here
himself.
to, yeah, not here to tell his side. Yep.
But let's get into it. The first thing I liked though in the beginning of this episode, the first thing out of anybody's mouth was first thing out of Warrior's mouth. Hogan had a running reputation for being a liar, a fraud, and a phony.
Yep.
Baby, you hit that shit three for three.
Yeah. Well, I mean, especially now, a lot of stuff's starting to come out, you know. As much as we liked him as a wrestler, we were all Hulkamaniacs when we were
Yes, we
kids.
were.
But when you find out about the backstage political stuff that he pulled, like, you know.
It takes away from everything, and you're wondering, was he really? Part of my French, was he really like a freaking asshole? And yes, he was. Unfortunately. Now your round table, I love the people they got for this. You got Gabriel
What
Iglesias.
the hell what is he doing
I
there? But the
don't
thing
know
is,
what he's
I
doing
don't
there.
I don't really watch this show, so I know they have celebrity. I want to use celebrities in quotes. They have
Yeah.
celebrities on these panels. I just want wrestlers there on the panels. That's it. I don't want,
Well, we
and I
got him
want guys, and I want guys that were wrestling with those people at that
in
time.
that timeline.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, that's what I want.
Unfortunately, here we really didn't have that because you had JBL, Natalia, who I don't even know why she was on there,
I don't know
Cody
if she's on there.
Rhodes,
Cool. Okay, all right.
and Kevin Nash.
Nash doesn't belong on any of these. Because he's another bullshitter.
No kidding.
So, like, he's
I
another
was
guy that
waiting for
doesn't.
his freaking nose to grow in this one.
He's another guy that he remembers things that didn't happen. Like he remembers like his timelines. Have you ever? I watch a lot of interviews with him. No, it's crazy. Like he'll remember like the timelines incorrectly and things that didn't happen. And I'm
The
like, dude,
epitaph on his gravestone will read, "Here lies Kevin Nash.
yeah,
He never said the same thing
right,
twice."
right. Or does it have to make sense? What was the line?
Yes,
I'm
does
getting
it
paid.
have to make sense?
Right,
I'm
I'm
getting
getting
paid half
paid.
a million
Right.
dollars.
Does it have to make sense? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's
Anyway.
right. Judy Bagwell on a pole match.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
everybody will love
Mhm.
that. Okay.
Anyway.
They started briefly, on the breakdown of how the Warrior, started and came about, in
Dingo Warrior.
1986, the Dingo Warrior,
Dingo
which was
Warrior.
pretty
Yep.
impressive.
Mhm.
Paul Heyman saying, they went into his personal life
Right. Yeah.
briefly. He grew up dirt poor, who didn't,
Indiana.
in a
Indiana.
trailer in Indiana. Yeah.
The father walked out on him and his mother, yeah, which is a shame.
Yeah, at age 11. So he focused on the gym, making
Hmm.
himself better, taking, I guess, his frustrations of everything
Hmm.
in real life out on the weights, which it really worked. Um, in 1987, they said that WWE was not ready for the Ultimate Warrior. Okay. A few years into the Hulkamania era at this point, he makes it. We talked about it before, but they reached on it here. His debut, October 25th, 1987. He made
Right.
his debut Wrestling Challenge.
Right. They let him know he's gonna be on TV that night.
Yeah. And of course, Hogan at this point, he thinks the gimmick is brilliant.
Right. He says
Finally,
he
he
liked
says
the
something
colors. He
right.
says, "Oh, I liked his colors, his look." He's like, "I was a little jealous." Something to that effect.
His promos were unique,
Yeah.
which we all love
They were
them.
great, man.
Oh, they were awesome.
They were awesome. I don't care what anybody says.
Heyman had said that at some point Vince wanted out of uh, the Hulk Hogan era while it's hot, which makes sense.
Right before he said, like before it starts to go
Before it
down.
hits the decline, yeah.
Yeah. Hmm.
And that makes perfect sense. And the first step that the Warrior took, they showed SummerSlam '88,
Hmm.
which Jimmy Hart just absolutely loved it. He said
Right.
that this was the next step for
Hmm.
Warrior.
And Hogan said he had his eye on him, and he could see that they were starting to push him. So Hogan was probably like, how do
Yeah,
I
okay,
sabotage this guy?"
exactly. And of course, everybody knows the rivalry between these two officially started at the
Right.
1990 Royal
Royal Rumble. How
Rumble.
can we forget that?
Hogan eliminates him. Why not? Then all of a sudden, if you got to love this. If I have a feeling that Hogan only teamed with people that intimidated him and that could take his spotlight. If
Oh
you notice that,
yeah, I understand what you're trying to say. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Savage, Sid, Warrior,
Right, right, right.
anybody that he feels that could take the limelight away from him, he's got a team with and
Right,
keep an
right, right.
eye on him and steal their spotlight,
Right,
so to
right, right.
speak. Um, Now Hogan said that Vince wanted Warrior to. Hogan said Vince wanted Warrior to replace Hogan,
Mm-hmm.
and nobody had him prepared for that. As it
Right,
was his
nobody.
quote.
So why didn't he help him then?
Exactly.
If he's the guy, why didn't he take him under his wing then and help him
Yeah,
out?
because that's not going to work for me,
No, and
brother.
Warrior even said in this that Hogan would rather mess up the feud like than for it to go well to protect himself and that he didn't help him out. He didn't offer any suggestions like, hey, how should I do this? Should I like go out of character and talk, more like the way I really speak, or should I lean into the character of the Warrior? He didn't offer him any suggestions. So he wasn't ready. Nobody helped him. Well, why didn't you help him? Anyway.
Do you ever wonder why? And I was thinking about this on the way home from work today. Did you ever wonder why between the time of 1986, let's not count 87 because Andre was the main eventer
Hmm.
with Hogan that year, but over the course of the timeline of Hulkamania, especially 1986, do you ever wonder why there wasn't like okay, this day and age right now, in the current roster, you have 10 to 15 main event guys that can go out there, put on a hell of a show, and possibly become and claim that championship. Whereas in like let's say 1986, you really don't have anybody on that roster. Why? Because all it is Hogan versus Sika, big boot, leg drop. I'm
Right,
posing for
who's
10 minutes, and
I
off we go.
mean, to be fair though, I mean that's more about Vince than it is about Hogan.
It is. The reason why I say this is because one of the things that they were talking about when Warrior became champion, and I know I'm jumping the gun here, but I wanted to bring this out because this bothered me a little bit. They said that how during his title reign it was subpar, and I'm paraphrasing. Yet, who on that roster did you have prepared to be the villainous main eventer when Hogan lost the title to
Right,
Warrior? You
right,
didn't.
right.
You realistically, I mean, you didn't have Rude. Why? Because Rude could have been there. Hogan didn't want to work with him.
It should have been Earthquake, in my opinion. I don't want to get too sidetracked. They should have built
Hogan
up
Hogan buried him.
But Hogan buried him.
Hogan buried Earthquake. He
They
buried
gave him to
Perfect. He
Hogan.
buried
Yeah,
Rude. He
yeah,
buried Jake the
yeah.
Snake Roberts. Anybody that Vince
Right,
wanted to work with Hogan, he
right.
buried them. So realistically, during the time of Warrior's
What did you
title
want?
run,
He needs that Andre. He needs that Macho Man.
he
So
had the one.
yeah, well he
He
did.
had Savage,
Right, but they
and
took the
they
belt
didn't
off
do
him
it.
before that they
Exactly.
got yeah, yeah.
What? How do you expect his title run
I
to go
agree. I
when
agree.
you have him losing to Sergeant frickin' Slaughter?
All right.
We've
I know.
talked about that.
Yeah.
I mean, his reign wasn't good. Who did you give him to defend the title against?
Yeah, no, I agree.
Who was prepared? Ted DiBiase, I would say, was probably a
DiBiase
distant
was
second to
yeah.
Savage as far as main event heels. But realistically, who did you have ready to step into a huge feud with Warrior over that title?
Yeah.
You didn't because Hogan buried all the heels.
But they fed. I mean, my thing
They
was
were fed to Hogan.
Yeah, they were fed to Hogan. Yeah. So
If that's where you were going with that,
yeah.
I don't know. Anyway, okay, let's go back a little bit on the episode itself as well. Hogan with the easy sell that the young lion will take over old
Mm-hmm.
lion if he's not on his game. Okay. Natalia had said that out of the rivalry you get this amazing tag team as well. Like I said, if
Yeah.
Hogan's intimidated by you, he's going to join forces with you.
Well, I mean, that was good for the feud, though. It was good to set up the match.
It was, yes.
So,
In this case, it was
that scenario. Yeah.
Yeah. And of course, she also said that Warrior is a great replacement for Hogan.
Yeah.
I agree. We all agree. They showed Saturday Night Main Event on January 27th, 1990, Hogan and Warrior versus Perfect and the
Hmm.
Genius.
Awesome.
How it was a great match. And then at the end, it gets chaotic. Because, well, that was because of the feud.
Right.
You know, it has to at
It
this
has.
point.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
Warrior accidentally clotheslines him.
Oh, yeah.
Checking his face, getting all mad and stuff. Now Hogan's, acting like a little baby. Wah, wah, wah. Not to mention the fact that Warrior had that match won, and of course Hogan tags himself
Yeah. He
in,
tags himself in. Yeah. He slapped
does the
away.
leg drop wrong, by the
Yeah.
way.
Right. Right.
No, and nobody probably caught
Right.
that. And then of course Hogan has to get the victory. Okay, whatever. Seth Rollins had chimed in on this too. Never did we get two heroes facing each other at the top of their games. Yes, because this was unheard of in
Hmm.
1990.
Yeah.
Two
Absolutely.
baby faces
Oh,
going
yeah.
at it.
Champion versus champion.
Exactly. We didn't have it. It was Vince didn't.
No, not at a pay-per-view. We
Not
had it at the
not
house
so
shows.
much Vince doing it, but
Right.
it
Right.
just was pretty much unheard of in the business.
We had it on the house shows, but not at
Yes,
the pay-per-views. Yeah.
and the pay-per-views really were every few months,
Right.
and
Yeah.
unless it was WrestleMania or SummerSlam, you really weren't getting that title defense because Survivor Series had its gimmick
Right. Right.
and the Royal Rumble, obviously.
Right.
So Hogan thought he was on fire. Vince said, "No, I don't think you are." This was around the time that Hogan was sort of hitting a decline.
Yeah. A little bit. 90. A little bit. Yeah.
I could go back a couple of more years because remember when he wanted Jake the Snake Roberts to feud with Hogan, and Hogan and Jake hits Hogan
Right.
with the chair. Who
This
got
is-
the bigger pop?
Yeah. 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 But Jake was over though. Jake was really over.
Well, as a
Yeah.
heel, yeah, at that
Yeah.
time. But he got cheered for what he did to Hogan, and Vince
Yeah.
was like, "No, we can't do that."
Yeah.
Saying, and then it's. I think the decline though it was there in 1990 because I mean fans have seen now 5 WrestleManias. Hogan
Yeah.
in the main event 4 out of the 5. I mean, it's like, is there anybody else that we can see here?
I think it was Heyman that said that Hogan wanted to be champion forever.
Yes,
It was Heyman that said that. Yeah, I believe it.
I want Hogan. I want that to come out of Hogan's mouth
Yeah.
and be like, all right, finally, some truth.
Yeah.
But we're not going to get that. Warrior goes to they talked about now, and they only brought up bits and pieces, but
Yeah,
that's typical.
It's old archival footage of the Warrior. That was the DVD that came out years ago when he went into the Hall of Fame. Like they show clips of him, which is nice to see footage of him.
Yeah,
Because he's not here, but they can't tell the whole story.
no, but they after WrestleMania 6, they focused on SummerSlam.
No, but how about
1991.
how about when they talk about WrestleMania 6, how Hogan is saying how Warrior blew up. He's like, "Oh, I can't breathe.
Bull.
And JBL's like, it's a credit to Hogan because, Hogan could have buried him. He really could have buried him. Instead, Hogan carried the match.
He tried. Remember, he had to kick out of Warrior's finisher.
Like Raz said, "Work on, brother."
Exactly. Exactly. Man, we should have had him on this one too.
Yeah. Damn it. He's got to be on again.
Yes, definitely. Hogan's like, I had to carry him through the match. No, you didn't. Don't lie. And then they talked. I laughed when they talked about the carts and Warrior's like, no, I'm running.
I'm running. Yeah. Listen, Hogan did. It was a good match, and I do credit Hogan because Hogan had a lot of experience. So I'm not going to bash him on that front. But
No.
but the idea, I love how there has to be another slant to it. Like, he was out of breath, and get out of here, man. Give me a break. They have to say something negative. Why can't you just say, we had a great match. He was inexperienced, but he listened to me, and we were able to have a great match together. There's got to be like a negative, like. All right. Anyway, let's keep going.
Exactly. Let's keep it to back to 1990 before we get into 91. Because remember, they showed Warrior was on the Arsenio Hall show.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
And he said Hogan has been the greatest that has ever been, but I have not yet been.
Right. Yeah.
I love that quote. In other words, I'm coming for it. I'm getting it.
And they showed they showed the contract signing.
Oh, that was awesome.
Yeah.
And the quote, that darkness where you live, once you sign this, that's where you'll remain. And Warrior saying, I'll take 2 and become 1. That was
Awesome,
awesome.
awesome, great stuff.
Because he holds both titles. He goes, "I'll
Both.
take two and become
Mm-hmm.
one." I'm like,
Sign. Hogan's like sign, sign.
goosebumps, baby,
Yeah,
goosebumps,
that's good stuff. Good stuff.
like The Rock.
Mm-hmm.
Even watching that now, I'm like, "Oh yes, this
Yeah,
is
this is.
awesome." And so, you know, saying that the nerves got to Warrior is bull. I mean, okay, maybe a little bit because this is the first
I'm sure he
time
was. Yeah, I'm
in
sure
the
he
main event,
was. Yeah,
67,000 people.
of course. Who wouldn't be in that situation? He's never been on that stage.
No, but don't act like
He was out of. He blew
you
himself
you, you
up,
literally had to
and
carry
he had
him through
a
the whole match. I don't think so.
like, dude, come on, man. Warrior was
If
Hogan.
there was a moment where Warrior where the nerves kind of maybe kicked in a little bit, all right, I'll buy that.
Right? Yeah, of
And then
course.
Hogan got him back on track. But to say you got to carry him, you carried him the whole match. No, I don't think you did. I really don't think you did. So, and then like you said, Hogan could have buried Warrior. No, because Vince had a vision of
Right.
where
He
he
would have
wanted to
buried
go.
himself. Hogan would have ended up burying himself if he
E-
tried to pull a stunt like that.
exactly. And then, of course, Hogan said once he calmed down and listened to everything I
Mm.
told him, I made him look like $1 million. Okay, if that's how you want to put it, go ahead. That's fine. Warrior won, and the Warrior era now began after he wins the title. Hogan gave Warrior the title. I thought that was a cool
No, it was
sign
a
of
good moment. It was
respect.
a good moment.
Um, so Undertaker had said that Warrior felt the pressure and was really on edge.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure that he did, but when they start talking about like, oh, Pritchard was like, oh, the bottom line is that he didn't draw, like he didn't, business
Business
wasn't as
wasn't good with
good.
Warrior as
Well,
champion.
it takes time, and not only that, I think the business was starting to decline anyway at that point. I don't think it was at its apex like the late '80s. Once you hit like 90, 91, there is a dip. I don't think you could just blame the Warrior for that. Not only that, the Warrior has to look over his damn shoulder because Hogan is still there.
Exactly. And
He's
this
still
goes back to
there.
what I said earlier. Who do you have? What main eventers do you
Right.
have
Right.
prepared
Even
for Warrior to face for it to
right.
be good?
Even at SummerSlam, even though Warrior was the main event, it was a double main event, remember?
Of
Because
course it
because
was. Hogan was
Hogan
there.
was Hogan's return. Hogan was fighting Earthquake.
Now, I'm
So
surprised Hogan didn't come out, the whole year of 1990 with a countdown list of, it's just a matter of time before I get it back,
well,
brother.
remember they had that whole. I mean, I don't want to get too sidetracked, but remember they had that whole thing where Earthquake squashed them. And that was good storytelling. Don't get me wrong, but that
Hmm.
took away from the main event when the main event was Warrior versus Rude in the steel cage match for the title. The
Exactly.
focus the focus was still on Hogan. So how are you telling me that this is the guy when you're still focusing on Hogan? Anyway,
Placeholder. We had two. Unfortunately, you have to look at it like there were two placeholders until Hogan finished his movie
yeah,
nonsense.
another bad
And
movie.
exactly. And we've said this a dozen times. Warrior loses the title to Slaughter. Oh, he had a bad run. No, you had a bad opponent. Slaughter
He
had no
needed more
business being
time. It
the
was less than a
champion.
year. Let's get let's go to that point. I think we're up to that, right?
Yeah,
Leading
we
into
we
the
pretty much are. Um, because this is also when they brought in that wrestling historian Keith Elliott
the
Greenberg.
hell was he doing there?
I don't know. Um,
Sean Mooney. It was nice to see Sean Mooney again.
yeah, it was.
Yeah, that was cool,
I
man.
thought that was cool. I hadn't
Yeah,
seen him
yeah,
in a
yeah. He's
long
in good
time.
shape. He's in good shape too, though.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, he's the historian had said once he was no longer in pursuit of the title, that wasn't the same level. There wasn't the same level of
Not
interest.
true. Absolutely not. Absolutely not true.
I
I can
agree.
I can only
I
speak
know.
for myself. My interest didn't change. It wasn't like, oh, Warrior's the champion. Oh, I don't care anymore.
No,
I
I
want.
was I was Warriors the champion. All right, where are we going
Where are
from
we
here?
going? Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Who is he going to
yeah,
defend against? Please
yeah,
say it's not Hogan.
yeah, yeah.
But no, the one guy that everybody wanted to see Warrior face, we did not get it until WrestleMania 7, and by that point it was too late
Right.
because the title was not on Warrior, where we've said it a
Right. It
dozen
should have.
times,
It should have.
title versus career.
Yeah, like I said, it should have went. He should have feuded with Earthquake. Hogan should. It should have went. He should have feuded with Earthquake. He's that big monster heel. We want to see Warrior destroy him. Then
Yes.
he could have went to Rude, and then he goes to Macho Man. All title defenses. Forget about Slaughter. To me, he had no business.
No.
They only did that because of the Gulf War at the time. That's
And
the only
even
reason.
Hogan still could have faced Slaughter at WrestleMania 7
Yeah, you could have done something with them with that angle. He betrayed
exactly, Desert Storm
America. You
match or
didn't. Yeah,
whatever.
yeah, exactly. So yeah,
And then if anything, Warrior obviously beats Savage still at WrestleMania, keeps the title.
right.
Drop it later on to The Undertaker and let
Yeah,
Hogan take it from there.
yeah,
If you want,
yeah.
if that's the case, but at
Right.
least give him a credible
Yeah,
title run,
yeah, yeah.
not Slaughter.
Yeah.
That to me ruined it.
Right.
That
So yeah, because
that
you have him.
tarnished it.
Right. So you have him lose to. He loses to Slaughter
He loses to a,
at the
a
Royal Rumble.
jabroni who
At the
was
Royal Rumble.
never ever considered for a WWE Championship
Right.
run.
And
I mean, come
the
on.
excuse was he wasn't drawing. That was their excuse. So we put it back. We put the belt back on Hogan.
And then they still weren't
And
drawing.
then exactly. And then Pritchard. I can't stand Bruce Pritchard. Pritchard's just like, oh yeah, the fans they wanted to see Hogan get the belt back. They want, like, dude, man, I was a Hulkamaniac, but once Warrior got the belt, I wasn't like, oh, I want Hogan to get the belt back.
No,
I was invested
ready for the Ultimate
Yeah, I
Warrior's
was ready
title
for
run.
him. Exactly.
If we're doing the next year
Right.
to WrestleMania 7, let's see what we got.
Right.
Let's go.
Did they even cover that they didn't even cover that match. They jumped. They didn't even cover the Macho Man match. They skip to the video, right?
SummerSlam, yeah.
To the video, the apology video, because he told off that kid, and that kid's father ended up being somebody, like, I don't know. He was somebody. The father was somebody, because I saw this in another documentary. And Warrior does the apology video, and
he's like I don't know what I have to say here, man. And like you know,
that broke
what
him.
are we doing
Supposedly
here?
that broke the Warrior, and then what did they say, that he sends the letter to Vince, right?
Yeah. Well, the dollar amount is every time you hear this story, the dollar amount
500,000.
changes.
No, not only that. I love how they only highlight certain parts of that letter.
Exactly.
The story behind it, like the full story, is that Vince made a lot of promises. Oh, I'm going to pay you this. I'm going to pay you that. Blah, 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 blah. And then didn't carry out on any of it. So Warrior felt like, right or wrong, like you probably shouldn't, like if you're already advertised for that match, that's probably not it's probably
Best way to do it.
best way to do it. But I understand he felt like, I don't have any other options with this guy. He's not giving me what he promised me. So then basically tells him, you pay me what you owe me, or I'm not going to wrestle at SummerSlam in that match with Hogan.
And Vince said that if I've signed a match and I've told the fans that this is what you're going to see, I'm going to guarantee. So he went ahead and paid.
But let's get into Hogan. Let's get into Hogan's comments, please.
Oh, that he wants to break his legs.
That he said he was going to break his leg. Yeah, I told Vince I wanted to get there. This story has changed a couple of times, because wasn't it Sheik? Wasn't it Hogan that told Iron Sheik to break his leg? And now it's that he was going to do it.
Yeah.
But when he got called into the deposition, and they don't show this part, they show the deposition, but they don't show the part where Hogan has no recollection of breaking the leg, and then they show him the video where he said that he was telling
the
Sheik.
Audio, yes.
Right. Oh, okay. And so
this definitely changed.
Hogan wasn't breaking anybody's leg, dude. And let me ask him, how was he going to break his leg when they were on the same team? How was he going to turn heel?
Exactly. I was just going to say that.
Give me a break. He's bullshitting, bro.
That pretty much would have ruined the whole night.
Listen, man. Every time Hogan opens his mouth, like a lie is coming out of it.
Seriously. And of course, even Wade Barrett chimed in on it, saying how unprofessional the letter was. And all right, fine. We've said
Hogan,
that.
He's like, you don't do that. That's unforgivable. Okay.
Considering what you've done.
Right.
Oh, come on,
man.
Hogan's like, you don't hold up.
Vince was wrong. Like I said, when we did our Warrior video a few years ago, I said, and I still stand by this. Listen, Vince was wrong, and Warrior was wrong to a degree too. Nobody was 100% innocent, but the way they tell the story was that Vince was 100% innocent, and he didn't do anything wrong. And I like Sean Mooney, but Sean Mooney's like, oh, this is when the jealousy. Like when Hogan got the belt back, that's when the jealousy of the Warrior. It had nothing to do with jealousy. It had to do with the fact that he was made certain promises and Vince didn't back those promises up. Exactly. And at that point, he was just as big as Hogan. At that point, we're not saying overall. We're talking about in 1991, he was as big as Hogan, if not bigger.
Yep. And then, of course, was it Hogan that said you're a living legend in your own mind?
No, that was I think Vince. Vince had said that. Vince had said it in the letter. Yeah.
And then, he was suspended indefinitely. Makes his grand return at WrestleMania 8, which was awesome.
Right, but he's so bad they brought him back.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, because at this point now, Vince knows Hogan's leaving.
No,
So
Right.
they need somebody.
Right, to replace him. I understand that. But if the Warrior was so bad and had screwed over the company and did this unforgivable thing, why did Vince bring him back? Why?
Exactly.
What I think, he knew he was wrong too. Because Warrior got suspended. He didn't get fired. He got suspended.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gotta love it. And of course, Heyman was like the fans with the,
Oh, I love this
there
part. Go ahead.
were cheering for the Warrior. Then grew up cheering for the. This was the mid '90s.
Because they say, oh, a year later he's gone. He came back in '92 and then he's gone. First of all, like I love that what Heyman said because it's so untrue. Because Warrior got fired or suspended because of the steroid thing. That him and Davey Boy were trying out HGH or whatever, and then they got fired because of that because the feds were already after Vince and Vince got scared. That's why they got fired. It's not because he didn't draw money. It's not because the kids grew up. That's not what happened. This is what I hate about these WWE documentaries. They cut out so much stuff, and I don't want to hear about, oh, there's time constraints. The hell with that. If you're going to tell the story, tell the whole story, or don't
Put
tell
the
it at all.
whole thing in
Put the
there.
whole thing in. They edit it and they frame it in such a way like they have their own narrative that they. I thought this was going to stop once Vince was gone. I thought, oh, this nonsense is going to stop. It hasn't stopped. They're still painting their narrative. Not only that, did you notice they forgot about '96? They
Well,
pretended it didn't even happen.
Well, they showed a couple of when Heyman was talking about the same fans that grew up
But
to.
they didn't mention. They didn't mention that
They just
he
showed
came back.
They just showed the video.
They didn't
A couple of
mention that
videos,
he
that's
came
it.
back in 1996. They
Yeah,
didn't.
no,
They
they
didn't mention that he came back with a new attitude, which would have worked in the Attitude Era.
Yes,
It
it
would
would
have
have.
worked with the older kids that had grown up, and mind you, that's 4 years later. It's that from '92 to '96.
It's not a whole lot of growing up,
You know, so they edited all of that out like it never happened. Not only that, the fact that in '97 Vince tried to bring him back again and offered him a contract. Vince was begging him to come back, but oh, the kids grew up. Get out of here. That's nonsense. It's nonsense.
If that's the case, then you can do the same thing with Shawn Michaels. Shawn Michaels walks away in 1998, comes back in 2002. Kids grew up, still cheering for him.
Yeah, it's
I mean, if
nonsense.
you're a Warrior fan when
He
comes
evolved,
back,
but not only that, he evolved. Remember in '96,
exactly,
he was more of himself. He had an edge. He wasn't the same like. So stop. I don't want to hear.
You never heard him cursing in one of his
Right, it was
promos, but he
awesome.
started to.
No. And we know what happened. We're not going to get into what happened in '96. We know what happened. But
Exactly.
and then they basically jumped to '98, right?
Yeah, Hogan turning was brilliant, blah blah blah, and then in 1998, now we got the ratings war.
That
Bischoff told Hogan, "There's an
yeah.
opportunity that I can grab Warrior.
Yeah.
Can you and will you work with him?" Hogan said yes. Yeah, because Hogan's got in the back of his mind, I'm
He's
going
gonna
to
bury
bury
him. He's gonna bury him. Yeah.
And on August 17th, 1998, on Nitro, Warrior joins WCW, and Hogan's like, now I have to beat him. Okay. Apparently that night, Warrior pissed off everybody, according to
yeah, because of the promo, right? And
Hogan said he went on forever with a bunch of gibberish. They missed a commercial break. I don't give a shit. This is big.
No, it was great. Listen, did it go on a little bit too long? Maybe, but it was still good. And that's Bischoff's fault. If you can't control the time, that's Bischoff. Yeah,
exactly.
No. It was a great. I don't want to hear this. Then your boy Nash in there, like, oh, it was horrible and everything. The ratings were good. We were into it as fans. Stop it.
Hell yeah! As soon as he came back, I put the remote down. All right, I want to hear what he has to say.
I was locked in. Yeah, I was locked in. Just revisionist history.
And then we get Halloween Havoc.
Yeah, and not only that, they failed to mention that Warrior had tore his bicep during War Games. He had tore his bicep in that cage match, and he worked through it. Like he could have just said, "Oh, I can't do it." No, but he honored it. He struggled through the match. He got through the match. Hogan ruined. At least Hogan admitted that he ruined the match.
Yes, exactly. He screwed up the whole
with the flash
fireball.
paper with the fireball, and yeah, they stung up the joint. They did sting up the joint.
Seriously.
Right. And that was the thing. He was injured. And then basically, Hogan brought him in there. And now it's much more obvious to me that Hogan brought him in there just to squash him. Because why would you invest all that money in him? And after Hogan beats him, you just get rid of him. He did show up on like 1 or 2 Nitros after that, but then he was gone.
Well, remember, they were going to do the same thing with Yokozuna after this.
You have mentioned that.
He couldn't pass the physical because Hogan lost to Yoko. Now he wanted to bury him.
But in terms of the Warriors, obvious that's what they wanted to do because then they didn't do anything with him. You have all this money invested in him. You have to try to figure out a way
Even
So
after that match, okay, it's done. We stunk up the joint. It's over. Hogan beat him. What's next for the Warrior?
what's
Who are
next?
we going
Yeah,
to feud him with? No.
yeah. They
Even Warrior said there was clear intention
right
that
that
this is
he
what their
was.
plan
Yeah,
was all along.
he was disgusted. Yeah.
I don't blame him. You come back in 1998, they freaking made you look like shit. So this is where then they start showing the self destruction
Self
of the Ultimate
destruction of the
Warrior.
Ultimate Warrior.
Why is this
Right.
in this rivalry
So
documentary?
right,
Why?
exactly. If you're just talking, this is the thing. If you're just talking about their rivalry, you don't need to add all this other stuff. And here's the other thing. I love how I forgot who said it. I forgot who says it, but somebody says that they were making a documentary about the Warrior, and they brought these people in to interview them, and then they had all these bad things to say about the Warrior. And these are the things that have been said for years. No, they decided to make a hit piece on the Ultimate Warrior, and they did this with Bret Hart too. The video just never came out. That's a whole other story.
Mm-hmm.
And they brought them in to bash the Warrior. It's not like they were making a DVD about Warrior's career, and once they started interviewing people, they just started saying all these bad things. And oh, what are we gonna do? These people are saying all these bad things. What can we do? I guess we have to put this out. No, they did that with the intention to bury him. That's why they did it. That's why they did it.
No, I agree. And then, of course, even Pritchard on here was burying him.
It's another low life.
Uh-huh. And then, of course, April 18, 2009, they had the deposition because Warrior,
Right, you sued him.
Sued him for it. Hogan's deposition, and he's like,
and
like,
that was That was Vince's lawyer, the famous guy that beat the steroid trial, that was interviewing Hogan.
yeah.
I recognized his voice. Would you say that that the Warrior was just a flash in the pan? He's like, Hogan's like, in my opinion, yeah. And all the questions was just like, man. And Hogan said he just told the truth. He's like, oh, I just told the truth. I just told the truth.
Bullshit. He was reading off a damn cue card they had planned for him. Hey, just read this, guy. You'll be fine.
He was just trying to help Vince out to get a paycheck. That's all it was. I mean, to jump back a little bit, he did say that the whole thing about breaking the leg, he's like, oh, that's who I was back then. He's like, that wasn't the right thing to do. So, I mean, I don't even believe that story, but he is admitting that, like, oh, yeah, I did make some mistakes. Take that for what it's worth.
Exactly. But at least when Warrior did a video on Hogan, now
went off.
Hogan doesn't have courage, brain, or heart.
I saw that video too. It was bad, dude. It was just like 45 minutes of the Warrior just going off on Hogan.
He didn't even look good when he did it.
Yeah.
I mean,
he was pissed off.
Yeah, well, can you blame him? I mean,
he said he had no choice. He wanted to defend himself.
Why not?
What are you going to do?
Put out a DVD, just pretty much saying that you're worthless. You were a no draw.
Right. Everyone hated you.
You couldn't work. They couldn't work with you.
You couldn't speak on the mic.
How many times? I remember on the DVD they also talked about he no-show dates and all this.
Right, but they don't tell the whole story.
We know why.
We know why it happened. Yeah,
exactly.
We got to do another Warrior video. We're gonna get Raz. We have to do another. We're gonna figure something out. There's a lot to say.
You know me. You put Ultimate Warrior on there, I'm game.
Yeah.
But let's go ahead and they from there they go on to the Hall of Fame ceremony, April 5th, 2014.
Right. He was such a piece of garbage that they brought him back for the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, and of course you hear the story of Jake Roberts, who was also going to be inducted that night. Oh, I've got a roll of quarters in my hand. Knock on. Yeah,
but he didn't say it. He didn't say it on this. But yeah, I know what you're talking.
No, he didn't say it on this.
Right.
But Warrior made amends. They showed him hugging Jake the Snake Roberts,
which was good. It was great, man. It was great for him to come back and come full circle.
Just bury the hatchets, man. It's like it was years ago. Like it's over. He talked with Scott Hall. The next day, Hogan and Warrior spoke and shook hands.
Hogan spotted him. Hogan was in the golf cart and he spotted him and he went over.
Yeah. Warrior apologizes to Hogan. Hogan apologizes as well.
It was good to see. I hope it was sincere. It was good, hopefully.
Yeah. And then, unfortunately, then they went to April 7th, 2014 on Monday Night Raw, where Warrior came out. They were talking about how it was his last speech, kind of like he predicted what would happen.
Right, we spoke about that.
Yeah. And because he comes out that night and he's redder, he's red in the face.
Right, he's out of breath.
He's doing the like he normally would, only this time it looked like it was for real.
Really labored, yeah. Everything was labored. Yep.
And even in the ring, before he put the mask on, he had his suit, the trench coat on and stuff, and you could tell something was off.
Hmm.
And when he gave that speech, it was like he was saying goodbye, like he
Yeah,
knew.
like he knew that he was gonna go. Yeah, yeah, sad.
And to find out the next day that he had a heart attack at the hotel afterwards, it was just like, you
Yeah.
got to be kidding me. He was just there.
Yep.
Fans were chanting one more match, for Christ's sakes. I mean, not that we would have seen
Right,
it,
right,
but
right, right, right. Yeah. Yeah.
it's like I couldn't believe this happened, and I'm like, the air got knocked out of me. Like
Absolutely.
he was like just there. Like, well, what are you talking about? It's just it's one of those things that hit hard,
Hmm.
and I mean, it's I'm glad that at least he got to go into the Hall of
Hmm.
Fame.
Absolutely.
Uh, you know, rivalries and dissension was buried
Right. They put
with
out a
Jake
couple.
and Hogan.
They put out a couple more DVDs where he got to tell his story. Mhm.
Yeah, at least they didn't badmouth him that time.
Right. Well, he was still around and he could. He was, he had creative. I guess he had probably some sort of creative control in those
Control
DVDs
over
that
it.
came out. I have both of them. They're pretty good. But yeah. So then, what did they get into? They just got it. They just went back to Hogan, right? I think they go back to
Yeah.
Hogan talking.
And then of course, Cody had said Warrior gave his own eulogy,
Right.
pretty
Yeah. Pretty
much.
much. Yeah. Yeah. And then
But
Hogan says
yeah,
how their feud could have gone on for forever. Could have, which I guess it could have. Had things played out a little bit differently. You know.
exactly.
But I mean, it was a good rivalry. It wasn't what it could have been because it could have been better. That
Hmm.
rivalry could have been better. But that Hogan Warrior WrestleMania 6, that's the rivalry. We got that, and it was tremendous, and it was great.
All we needed was that one match.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. But as far as this documentary, I mean,
Just another cheap shot to
it's yeah,
belittle him, berate him, and
you
he's not
leave
here to
out.
defend
He's not
himself.
here well, we're here, thankfully, but unfortunately, he's not here. But yeah, they edit out so much. They tell such a small part of the story, and it felt like you said they were going down that self-destruction path again. For some, I don't know why. I don't know
This
why.
didn't feel like a rivalry documentary. This just felt like
Right,
everybody could say what they want, talk shit about the Ultimate Warrior all they want on
right,
this,
right,
and say, "Oh yeah, we had this great rivalry. However, this is how he acted during it, and
right.
this is what he
Exactly.
was doing." And
Almost like he's the one he messed it up. Yeah, that's the
exactly,
gist of it.
and
Yeah,
the fact that he's not here to defend himself, or the fact that you didn't have anybody to represent him
yeah.
to
Right. Is
rebut
why for
everything is
somebody. Yeah,
ridiculous.
yeah. I agree. All right. Well, that's our review. Please like, comment, share, subscribe. See you guys soon.
Take care.